I'm going to compare the Deathshroud to the Blightlord Terminators to tell you which one you should be using in your list. So the basic stat line of the Deathshroud and Blightlord is very similar, with them having the same strength, toughness and wounds, as well as a 2-up save and a 4-up invulnerable save, so them both being fairly resilient, although the only difference in the strat line is that the Deathshroud actually have slightly better melee focused abilities, which is fairly obvious given they are a more melee focused unit, as they hit in melee on 2-ups, whereas the Blightlords hit on 3-ups, and also they get 1 more attack for the Terminator, 1 more attack for the Champion, 4 and 5 attacks as opposed to 3 and 4 attacks, which is what the Blightlords get. However, it is also important to remember that the Blightlords are 10 less points per model, with Deathshrouds being 50 points and the Blightlords being 40 points. However, the Blightlords will usually have to pay for the weapons they add on, and the Blightlords without the extra weapon choices aren't as good as when they do have the weapon choices, because that's what you're going to be using them for. And I'll get onto the weapons in a second, but first it's also important to compare the unit size, because the Deathshrouds have units of 3 and above, whereas the Blightlords have units of 5 and above, which gives the Deathshroud an advantage, because you can have more units of Deathshroud. It's generally smaller units better, not only because you have a higher champion to base model ratio, meaning you get those extra nice bonuses that the champion gets, but also it's more flexible. If you might have 2 Deathshroud units for 1 Blightlord units, you can use them in different places on the board, so it is nice being able to have smaller units for the Deathshroud. So in terms of their raw fighting ability, the Deathshroud Terminators, to be frank, completely destroy the Blightlords in terms of melee. After all, they are one of the Death Guard's strongest melee units, as with the Man Reaper and with more attacks than the Blightlords, they're going to be doing a massive amount of damage, whereas the Blightlords, they're only using the Bubotic Axe and Bale Sword. There's not really too much difference of which one they use, so they've got lower strength and they're only doing 1 damage per piece. And even though you can give a Blightlord the Flail of Corruption, that still doesn't really do much. It's only 1 out of your Blightlord Terminators, and obviously you're going to have them in units of 5+. So in terms of melee, the Deathshroud certainly do take over. So in terms of the Blightlord's range capabilities, it's actually quite interesting, because their ranged weapons are a mix. It's not like they're all given 1 weapon. Well, they do all have the default combi bolter, although you're going to be switching that out for either plasmas or melters, depending on which Blightlords you, and also flamers and stuff, but you're usually able to get all of the Blightlords with some other weapon, at least if you've got the minimum unit size. However, these ranged weapons, though they're quite good and it's quite nice being able to have them with the melee weapons, they're not too strong of a force, and to be honest, if you want the kind of like short range melee, I'd rather be taking Plague Marines or Deathshroud and just have the Deathshroud focus on melee. Because do remember, the Deathshroud do also have their gauntlets, even though that doesn't do too much. But even though the Blightlords do have some range capabilities and they can do some damage, I think particularly with the Blight Launcher and the Melter Gun, those are the only ones that really do significant damage, although the Melter Gun's only really good within 12 inches and 6 inches for the bonus, so it's not too great in all. So in conclusion though, the Blightlords are quite good, and they are probably quite a decent, solid Death Guard unit. If you do want Death Guard Terminators, there's kind of like more resilient models that with the invulnerable saves, they're going to be able to go up the board and survive until they get into close range in combat and do a high amount of damage. You're going to be taking the Deathshroud over the Blightlords, and although you can still put some Blightlords in your list, they are quite similar to Plague Marines. I might make a separate comparison with them versus Plague Marines, because Plague Marines are also quite good with that kind of like short range shooting, and the Deathshrouds are just so good at melee that they do basically destroy the Blightlords. So I hope you did enjoy this video. If you did, make sure to subscribe, because I'm going to be frequently putting up videos to do with Death Guard tactics. So I hope you enjoyed.